I would like to recognize Supervisor McClure. He's our chairman of our board that's here tonight with us. Some of you may know my area is going to get split up substantially, and Supervisor McClure will be more of the southern part of my current district. Then we've got Supervisor Miller just to the left of Neal here, Representative Carter. Steve is here, not necessarily as a Pinal County, but he's more here from CAP and CAGRD and working with our CAGRD representative down at the end. We have Neal Carter. Many of you know who Neal is. Our representative here that we just appointed, and he's coming up for re-election. Then to the left of Supervisor Miller is Justin Olson. He's currently one of the sitting commissioner, one of 5 of our commissioners, Arizona Corporation Commission. So he was kind enough to come out here tonight as well and help with some of this discussion that we're going to have. And then with EPCOR, we have Thomas. You're going to have to help me with your last name.
Loquvam.
Loquvam?
Loquvam.
Loquvam. Well, that was easy.
There we go. That's what I try to do.
Just read it right, huh? Okay. And then with CAGRD, we have Laura Grignano.
Yes.
Did I say it right?
Yes.
Well, that's the first. So I got an email probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it came in the next door email that we get, and we try to, that's how one of our communications efforts that we put out to the community. And in that email, I got chewed out because I voted to raise the CAGRD for the EPCOR. And so that's one thing that what that drove me along with Representative Carter was to create a venue or a place where you as our citizens could come and actually listen to the individuals that are actually responsible for the Corporation Commission, the CAGRD part, as well as EPCOR themselves. And so now here's what we're going to do. We're going to have questions afterward. Our goal and objective, the purpose behind this, is to explain CAGRD and to give our Corporation Commission and EPCOR a chance to talk about the bills and then some of the things that they're doing. So what caused the CAGRD fee to go up? That's going to be part of the objective tonight. What's been done about it? And then what does the future look like? So those are the items.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Goodman. And it's a pleasure to be here tonight with you. And hopefully I'll be able to answer your questions and help clarify what CAGRD is, often referred to as CAGRD. I know that our office talked to probably many of you. If it wasn't myself, my supervisor of my team, Jenny Martin, took a lot of calls from concerned customers, and we tried to explain what CAGRD is and what we do, and a little bit about the CAGRD adjuster fee that EPCOR has on the customer bills. So I'll just be brief and try to explain to you what the Central Arizona Groundwater Replenishment is. On the back of your agenda, I appreciate someone adding some terminology and some agencies. I work for CAP, for Central Arizona Project. CAGRD, or CAGRD, is just a department of CAP. We're not a separate organization. Back in the mid-90s, the legislature gave Central Arizona Project some extra responsibilities and authorities. And so that's how CAP took on this responsibility. And you can see it says that our purpose is to provide a mechanism for landowners and water providers to demonstrate an assured water supply. So Arizona has some pretty tough groundwater management laws and rules. And one of those, the cornerstone of Arizona's groundwater management, is called the Assured Water Supply Program. And it provides consumer protection to make sure that when you purchase a home, that your home has a 100-year supply of water. And that water supply, depending on where you live, could either be surface water, or it could be groundwater, or it could be a combination of those. And in this case, in your service area, most of that is groundwater. And according to the Arizona water management rules, most of that groundwater needs to be replenished. Some source of water needs to be put back into the aquifer to make the aquifers sustainable through time. The legislature created the CAGRD to help provide a mechanism for landowners or water providers that didn't have renewable supplies and instead would pay us to replenish most of the groundwater that's pumped and served to customers. So that's our main responsibility. EPCOR, I'll say the EPCOR service area, Santan and Santan Anthem, became members of the CAGRD in 2000. And that was under Johnson Utilities. And that, this service area, both service areas in the Phoenix AMA and Pinal AMA have been members of the CAGRD since then. And without being a member in the CAGRD, it would be really hard to get that designation of assured supply from the state because, again, the primary source of water here is groundwater. So as a member, EPCOR reports to us every year how much groundwater has been delivered to its customers by service area, by the two service areas here. That's sent to CAGRD, so we know how much groundwater we have to replenish. And we invoice EPCOR once a year based on the amount of groundwater that they report to us. CAGRD has rates that are set by our board, but those are not this fee that we're talking about tonight. Our rates have increased on average about 3% each year over the last couple of years. One thing that has changed is that EPCOR has been reporting more groundwater to the CAGRD over the last few years. So that's one of the reasons why the invoices that we have sent to EPCOR have increased. And I'll let EPCOR talk a little bit more about that. The ACC adjuster fee that we're here to talk about is a mechanism between EPCOR and the ACC in order to recoup the costs that they send to us, recoup those costs from their customers, from you. So I'll stop talking now and pass the mic on, but I hope that that's helped you better understand what the CAGRD is, what our role is, and I'll be happy to answer any questions later that you might have. Thank you.
You mentioned that EPCOR would be next, but the agenda says I'm next, so we're trying to debate which one do we follow. But I'm happy to go ahead if that works for you. All right, thank you so much. Well, first of all, just to introduce myself, my name's Arizona Corporation Commissioner Justin Olson, and it's a pleasure to be here with you again today. I remember the first time I came out to a town hall, it was shortly after I was appointed to the commission in 2017. And Supervisor Goodman did a tremendous job of gathering the community together and calling the attention of the commission to this area of our state. And it was an honor to be able to come out here and to hear from each of you and to hear firsthand the struggles that each of you had with Johnson Utilities at the time. And I was very pleased to be able to to play a significant role in leading the effort to change the direction of the utility here at Johnson Utilities. And we went through a significant amount of processes to ensure that you could have safe and reliable services at a fair price. Certainly, you all know that what happened as a result of those proceedings led to an interim manager. EPCOR took over and made significant improvements to the utility. Ultimately, Johnson Utilities sold now to EPCOR. Just wanted to give you a little bit about the background of this issue. I was very pleased to hear that description of the CAGRD. And I'm pleased that Supervisor Goodman has brought all of these different agencies together here today so that we can discuss with you how all of us work together in this somewhat complex issue. And so I'll just describe briefly the role that the Corporation Commission plays with regard to this particular item. With this item, the Constitution charges the Corporation Commission with setting just and reasonable rates, and that has been interpreted to apply to the utilities to say that the utilities can earn a just and reasonable rate of return on the investments that they make in the infrastructure that's necessary and proper for providing safe and reliable utilities. In addition, they can recover their costs associated with those expenses that are just and proper and necessary for providing those utilities. And so what happens with regard to this CAGRD is that this is one of those expenses that the utility has, that it is necessary to provide the safe and reliable water services to the community. And so what the Commission does is it allows the utility to pass the expense on in rates. And so 3 months ago, I believe it was, the Commission had the application from EPCOR before us to adjust the CAGRD fee that it was collecting from ratepayers. And as you all know, it was a significant increase in that fee because of the costs associated with paying the CAGRD in order to maintain that 100-year reliable water supply for you all, for the customers. I'm very pleased to be able to report to you here today the actions that the Commission took just a few hours ago at our open meeting, and I'm sure many of you may have been following that closely. EPCOR recognized or found that about 6 years ago, in 2016, George Johnson, when it was Johnson Utilities, came to the Commission and asked the Commission to change the process that the Commission allowed the utility to use for calculating the reimbursement of this expense. Essentially, the Commission previously, or the utility previously, would seek its reimbursement in arrears. So we'll look to the past and say, this is how much we paid for our assured water supply, the amount that we paid for CAGRD, and then it would charge that to the ratepayers. George Johnson came to the Commission in 2016 and asked to allow Johnson Utilities to collect this fee, this reimbursement, in a prospective manner, to evaluate what the costs are going to be in the future and set the fee accordingly. And so EPCOR noticed that there was this change, and they brought this information to the Commission and said, look, we can go back to the prior method of calculating this reimbursement, and EPCOR can still be made whole. We, the Commission, can fulfill our constitutional obligation of ensuring that these rates are just and reasonable, and that we're allowing the recovery of these expenses that are necessary for providing reliable services. But we can do it in a fashion that is going to be extraordinarily more cost-effective for the ratepayers. So I'm very pleased to be able to report that we were able to substantially reduce the CAGRD fee from the amount that it was set to 3 months ago, and there will be a credit on each of your bills coming in the next, I believe it's next month, in the next billing cycle in June. Yeah, so that's something that I'm very excited to be able to report to you all. And certainly, there's a lot of credit due to Supervisor Goodman and to Representative Neal Carter and to EPCOR in bringing this to the commission so that we can make this a much more cost-effective method of EPCOR recovering their cost of these fees that they have to pay in order to maintain a 100-year reliable water supply. So that's just an overview of where we're at, what the role of the commission is, and the exciting news that we're able to report from the open meeting here today.
Fee reductions always get claps. I love it. I'm Thomas Loquvam. I'm EPCOR's General Counsel and Vice President of Public Policy. I really appreciate everyone coming out. It's a sign of how important this is to you and, frankly, to us. We have a lot of team members here because we're really interested in talking to you and knowing exactly what's going on and making sure that you're getting the information you need from us and generally know what's going on. As Commissioner Olson just reported, the CAGRD adjuster was effectively halved this morning by Commissioner Olson and his colleagues in a 5-0 vote. And EPCOR had brought this forward on its own. Actually, in fact, I had looked at it, and the methodology I was like, this methodology is just too rich. George Johnson had procured it in 2016, and we don't need that methodology. Instead of collecting in advance, we can pay the CAGRD invoice and then seek reimbursement subsequently after the fact. We brought it forward. And we also proposed a refund for March, April, and May for the amounts that were collected that are over what the adjuster is now. And I know it doesn't fix the problem. I know the CAGRD adjuster will continue. This is a change in methodology, and for this year it'll be lower, but we will continue to use groundwater to serve this area, and this is something that I think is a much longer conversation. And I wanted to touch on that and talk about what EPCOR is doing to address groundwater use prospectively and for the long term. Because the fact is that as we use groundwater to serve you, we report that the CAGRD, and under Arizona law, that CAGRD then replenishes that groundwater to keep the aquifer sustainable for the long term so that we can all, through this entire area, have 100 years of water, which I think is something we all agree is really important. And so what we're doing is actively pursuing non-groundwater supplies so that into the future, our reliance on groundwater will go down and the GRD invoices will go down, and hopefully we can get off this hamster wheel. And in particular, we are pursuing 3 different, I don't want to get overly technical, and frankly, I'm not sure I would understand all the technical details, but there's recharge facility permits, which are basically tied to wastewater plants. Not only do we provide water to the folks in this area and to you, but also we provide a lot of wastewater service to a lot of people in this area. And what our wastewater facilities do is they create what's called effluent, which is treated wastewater. And that can be used under the groundwater rules, or under the water rules generally in Arizona, to reduce reliance on groundwater, or they can create credits that can offset the use of groundwater in certain circumstances. And as a result, the more effluent we produce and recharge into the aquifer, the less groundwater that we need to pay CAGRD for replenishment. And we have 3 of those permits pending. None of those permits, for some reason, had been obtained by Johnson Utilities, but in any event, we're rectifying that and doing that as fast as possible. In addition, we have a lot of other sources of water we're aggressively pursuing. In August, we will begin receiving deliveries of what's called NIA water. This is a source of water from the CAP canal that won't necessarily last that long, but because we keep having cuts on the Colorado River, but it will nonetheless create, for a couple of years at least, a stream of water that will similarly not be counted as groundwater to the extent that we use it to supply water service to you and to your neighbors. And we're doing other things as well. In fact, we're down at the legislature seemingly almost every day pushing for a bill this session that would permit EPCOR to produce water in what's called the Harquahala Basin, which is in the far west valley, and bring that water here to you, to serve you. And that wouldn't count as groundwater. And potentially, if everything works out the way that we would like it to, it would be a substantial source of new water supply that would permit us, again, to supply water without having to use groundwater in this area and thus need to pay for replenishment. And there's a number of other things we're doing. We're constantly looking at different water sources and trying to balance cost and quality and availability, and for the long term creating a sustainable water supply that for you and your children and your children's children can have and not need to worry about it, and also not need to break the bank over. That's our commitment to you. I can't change the fact that the GRD exists. We can't do it. I'd love to change the fact that we have to collect that tax on our bills, but the legislature decided that that's what utility providers will do when there's a designation. So that's what we'll do. But what I can commit to you is that we'll be transparent on our costs and how that translates into your bills. I can commit to you that when we find things that don't look right, we'll bring it forward and propose changes that we think make sense, like we did with the CAGRD adjuster mechanism this month. And we'll also continue to pursue new water supplies so that we can stop this long-term cycle of more and more groundwater, instead get on more sustainable water sources that are more cost-effective for all of us. That's what we'll do. We very much appreciate everyone being here. And as was mentioned, we have some customer service representatives here who can talk to you about your individual circumstances. If you'd like to, please reach out to them. They're right over there. In addition, we have some water conservation specialists. And if you're interested in learning how you can reduce your usage of water and conserve more, I'd really strongly encourage you to reach out to them. They have a tremendous amount of information, and there's a lot of actually pretty interesting and creative ways to conserve water that you might not have even realized existed. But those are the types of things that we really want our customers to take advantage of, because it benefits all of us over the long term. So again, thank you very much, and I'll pass the mic now.
Supervisor, if you don't mind, I just noticed that Walt Blackman walked in. I would like to introduce him, if you don't mind. Ladies and gentlemen, I just noticed that State Representative Walt Blackman walked in, and I just wanted to recognize him as well. He's running for Congress in the new District 2, which includes part of the Anthem Merrill Ranch Division and some other areas, so he's here to hear our concerns and to be able to work with you on them as well. So anyway, thank you for coming, Walt Blackman.
Thank you. Real quick, just I think the ACC and EPCOR both forgot to mention that there's also a 5% credit attached to the reimbursement that you're going to be given back. Is that correct? Is that something that was discussed today?
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. So yes, in addition to the credit for the difference between the amount that was collected over the last 3 months and the amount that it was reset to at the open meeting today, there'll be interest at 5% calculated for that credit that you'll be receiving.
And then if I could just take, Supervisor Miller, if you could just take a couple of minutes and talk more a little bit about the recharging of these areas, which I don't believe Johnson's done that in the past.
Yes, thank you, Supervisor Goodman. Is that on? Okay. So, and I had a discussion with Mike before this meeting started, because I can tell you the water issues that are facing Arizona are somewhat large, and we're going to require multiple methods to maintain this growth and to maintain this water aquifer to supply that 100 years worth of water. It's doable. I just want to make sure everybody understands. The recharge of effluent water in these treatment plants is very important. We have not taken advantage of that and used that in the way that we ought to. So there's a whole slew of ideas that are coming forth, I can tell you. And I don't know really why I end up in this position of speaking to all of you, other than I was a builder and a developer. I used to have to get those 100-year certificates for my subdivisions. I'm really close to the ag community. I was married into a large agricultural family, so I understand the needs there for the ag community. We have to coexist. I mean, that's just going to be part of the deal. But I believe that we can manage this aquifer and supply these waters going forward. But it's going to require a number of different methods going forward. I'm going to rely on Neal to help me with some legislation in the future, because we do have to look at our statute to be able to have some flexibility on how we move water. Taking that Arkwahela water and putting it and bringing it out east is very important. I hope we can get there someday. There's always seems to be some challenges to that. And so but we're going to continue to work on it, and I'm all in on it. So I hope everybody has the confidence of a lot of smart people, and I'm not one of those smart people. I'm just one of those. I'm the politician that goes and talks to Neal and say, hey, we need a statute change. So, but it's all good, and they're all making the right kinds of moves, and we're doing the right things to maintain this aquifer.
Thank you. And so with that, what we're going to do now is, I didn't mean to stop. His head's getting big enough as it is, so you don't need to clap for him. So what I'd like to do now is, one of the things that we wanted to provide an opportunity for you, the individuals, and quite honestly, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you reaching out to our offices and expressing, kudos to you. Just like in the past, when we started working on the Johnson Utilities issues, it was you, the citizens, that brought a lot of this to the attention of the ACC and the issues and the problems that we were having. This is the same thing right here with you as citizens. This is what it's really all about, is citizens getting involved. So what we want to do is open it up. This is an open mic session for you to come up, and we have a mic back there. I'm going to take this one down too. So those of you that have some questions, then afterwards, Neal's going to wrap it up for us. So do we have anybody that?
I got it, Mike. Hey, really quick, we do ask that you try to keep your comments to 2 minutes. Did you have? Start here. We'll just kind of work our way around.
My name is Ron Kretschmann. I'm a resident Solera at Johnson Ranch. My question is, understanding that we know growth is coming and you can't stop all of growth to Santan Valley or any areas where people want to live. Understanding that, we all know that there's been a tremendous amount of housing being built in Santan Valley, and I'm sure there's going to be a great deal more in the future. My question is, how is the number of housing developments and homes, people affecting this 100-year rate every time we put in a new development? We're obviously challenged to provide more water to maintain the 100 years. And I'd like just an explanation of how we're going to manage that part of it with this tremendous growth to make sure that there is enough water and that it doesn't break the bank at some point because we have so much growth.
I think that's probably for me. And thank you. And frankly, that's a question that is on everyone's mind and should be on everyone's mind because it's an issue that's critical for Arizona generally. And I'll tell you, it's something that we work on literally every single day, constantly. I can assure you, for our Santan district, we have plenty of water. And new buildings and plats and developments aren't getting built unless that there's 100 years of water available for that new development. And now in terms of future developments, they're not going to get approved until, again, we have enough water for 100 years for that new development. And that touches on what I mentioned earlier, which is one thing that we are actively and aggressively talking about in a lot of different ways, and every different avenue we can chase down is how do we secure long-term sustainable water supplies that are at the right price and that are the right quality and the right availability. The Harquahilla legislation I mentioned is one of them, and that's a significant one, but that's just one of many that we're talking about. I can just assure you, I know there's a lot of buildings coming up in the area, and every single one that you see workers putting buildings up on, they have their water, and we have our water here, and it's fine. But going into the future, this is something we need to keep working on because the Colorado River continues to have cuts. You know, we continue to have drier and drier seasons. And that's part of the reason also why we brought our conservation specialists. I mean, this is something that all of us can participate in and try to find different ways of the solution. It's not going to look the way we think it's going to look when it all happens, but I'm confident we're going to be able to get there.
This last water bill, I paid more in fees than I did for the water. I feel like I paid for the water when EPCOR got it, and I paid for it again when I used it. Also, I want you to tell me how my wife and I used 9,000 gallons of water that I was billed for, with just 2 of us in the home. I don't believe it's possible for us to use that much water.
I'd really encourage you to talk to our customer service representatives. They're right there. Sarah's raising her hand, and she'd love to talk to you about that.
So I'm understanding that you do have representatives here that will be specific to that type of question, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
My name is Darla Tyler. We live in the Magic Ranch subdivision. I was charged $145 for this fee. My question is, we've been in our home 6 months. Why are we responsible for Mr. Johnson and EPCOR's failure to do what they were supposed to do? Why am I responsible for 6 years of charges that I wasn't here for?
That's exactly why we're here, and immensely frustrating. And I mean, it's a huge bill and you're not expecting it, right? I mean, and it's not fair. You've only been there for 6 months, and I hear you.
I know you hear me, but how are you going to fix it? I mean, I'm paying for Johnson failing to be... I'm paying for Johnson Utilities' failure to uphold the law. I'm paying for your failure to figure it out. I mean, we've been in 6 months, and this is 6 years ago. Why are we responsible?
Well, it begins with things like the application we brought forward, where we proposed reducing the fee, we proposed refunds, we proposed interest.
that.
And I know that's not the answer, and
No,
I
it's
tried
not.
to emphasize it's not the answer because it's not, but it needs to be part of it, and it is part of it. But I'd urge you again to talk to our customer service representatives and go. I don't have, other than knowing more specifics, I can't help.
So what I'm understanding him saying is, as you work with them, there's a credit coming to you with an interest. Okay.
Hi, I have a question, clarification first. The CAGRD tax, it sounds like it is passed on to EPCOR, who in turn includes that in their water bill that goes out to the users in that area. Is that right?
That's correct. It's passed through.
I live in Queen Creek, and the CAGRD tax shows up on our tax bill. And we get a bill from the town of Queen Creek, and on top of that, we get a CAGRD tax on our tax bill for the water usage. That's a calculation of how much water was used. So it sounds like what's going on in terms of how the taxes are applied is different depending on whether you're in Queen Creek or whether you're under EPCOR. Is that right?
Yes, and so there are 2 different types of members in the GRD. There are member service areas like EPCOR in the Santan area, and that's a designated water provider. There's also certificates of assured supply, and that's an individual subdivision that's served by an undesignated water provider. So some subdivisions have their own certificate and are members of the GRD, and if you live in one of those certificated subdivisions, your CAGRD tax will show up on your property tax bill.
Okay.
So-
I represent the HOA, a small HOA, 17 homes on Chandler Heights and Haas. And there's about a half mile of grass, 1 acre of grass. And our CAGRD tax last year was $5,600. And so you're forced to apply the recovery of that over those 17 homes. And our HOA dues went from $97 a month when we bought into the area to $230 a month, just mostly because of CAGRD tax and what we're paying. So, it's a big darn deal for a small community, and it's been very confusing to understand. I do have a question about dry wells. I believe there retention areas on 3 of them in that area are dry wells. Do the dry wells count as credit to feed water back into the groundwater?
They don't from the state's perspective. They do for, I think, flood control, but they don't offset credits for reporting to the GRD.
Okay, thank you.
And our rates are about $700 an acre foot, $760 an acre foot. So if you're CAGRD bill was $5,000, you may look at how much you're watering the grass. You know, and
We
look,
used 8 acre feet one year and 10 acre feet another year. So it's
Right.
1 acre of grass that
Well,
was put in.
So that might be something you want to look at. You know, golf courses are allotted around 4 to 5 acre feet per acre a year that are using groundwater. So there may be some ways that you can still irrigate your grass, but just do it a little more efficiently and maybe cut that back in half, both your water use and your CAGRD fee. So I'm happy to talk to you more about that. We're looking at ways we can help our water providers and HOAs become more efficient with especially common areas, because that is one of the biggest water uses. Is up to 70% of Arizona's residential use is outside because it's so hot and dry. And so landscaping takes a large amount of water. And there's some programs that we're trying to help water providers incentivize and help folks learn how to check their irrigation systems, maybe make sure that they're watering when they should be. If it's raining, they turn off. And I'm happy to talk to you afterwards on ways that we can work with you to help you save some water on those common areas. Thanks.
Thank you. And it almost sounds like he's being double taxed on the CAGRD.
Well,
So
and
that's
I could
probably
talk to
where
him
you can-
about that. On
you could help
there
him
is
out
a
with that.
line, a CAWCD line on property taxes in the 3 counties. So maybe we can look at your property tax bill and make sure you're not, you know, getting assessed on your property tax bill and also paying on your water bill. That should not be happening.
I was going to say thank you for coming out here, and I just have some major concerns about using wastewater to drink. I have some major concerns about using wastewater for drinking, being that a lot of chemicals, a lot of pharmaceuticals are put into that water down the drains, and I was wondering, how are we going to clean that water, make it safe for drinking? I was wondering, are you two going to drink that same water that we're forced to drink, and is that acceptable? And I think that we should find a better option, and that down south they're flooding 10, 20, 30,000 acres 1 foot deep, a lot more than our houses are using, and that we need to come to some solution. If you're using that much water and we're forced to drink piss water because they're flooding it 1 foot deep, 100,000 acre parcels, is that acceptable? I thank you for your time. I thank you for coming out, and I appreciate it.
Thanks. Thanks for your question, and it's a good one. And I apologize if what I had said previously was not clear. When I discussed effluent and recharging it, that is not putting it into the drinking water system. That is not sending it to our water treatment plant and then sending it back out to homes. That is recharging it deep into the aquifer, and it sits there for a long time. And eventually it mingles, and then and it becomes part of the generalized area in the aquifer. But generally, we treat our wastewater to the highest degree you can treat it before we even do that. Entirely separately, when we have our existing wells and we pump those wells from the current aquifer, not the water that we're recharging, but the aquifer that currently has the groundwater in there, we then take that and we test it and we treat it. And I'm very proud to stand by what EPCOR does with its water at the highest level quality it can provide. And I personally, I would drink it all day. It is the highest quality.
Thanks, everybody, for being here. Supervisor Goodman, Representative Carter, and the rest of you, and the commissioners. I've got to be formal here, and Senator Blackman. My question is about the effluent water. If you do start recharging this, and we can reintroduce it into the groundwater at some point in time, I understand that'll decrease our reliance on the Phoenix AMA. So in the meantime, you're selling this wastewater, this effluent water. Do the funds from that effluent water get let's say you take that away from the CAGRD fee that we're paying, because you're not recharging the water, you're selling it, and why aren't those funds going to offset the CAGRD fee?
The circumstances can vary in terms of exactly how that situation unfolds, but often what we do when we sell effluent or non-potable water to golf courses or to farms is what we're allowing them to do is not use groundwater to water their grass at the golf course or water their farm. And as a result, sometimes that can permit us to obtain those credits and bank them or otherwise use them in a manner that offsets the groundwater. And alternatively, you had discussed, or separately, you had discussed sort of the revenue stream that comes from those effluent sales, and that goes and reduces the overall cost of service, and otherwise, it contributes and pays down our costs. So it does become part of that. It's not necessarily earmarked or otherwise separately pegged for CAGRD, but instead is part of our cost to serve, because we have a cost to serve to create that effluent, and when we sell it, that revenue is meant to pay for that cost to create the effluent in the first place.
Hi, good evening. Glad everybody's here. This has been a long time coming, I think, for a lot of residents. I have 2-3 questions. I'll try and make them very short. You talked about the water west of Phoenix, getting that hopefully maybe in the future to bring in additional water supplies. Is that going to be brought in through the CAP water transfer system is a question, or is that going to require additional infrastructure in order to get that transported from point A over to here?
The cheapest way would be through the CAP canal.
Okay, so that CAP doesn't have the ability to transfer that at this point. It's not like we could tie in.
The way the law is set out is that water providers like EPCOR are not allowed to go produce that water in the Harquahela Basin and use it to serve their customers. Other water providers are, and we're just seeking equal treatment to do so. And once we have that authorization, we would be able to go drill wells there and produce the water, treat it, and then put it in the CAP canal and have it travel here, and then we would build whatever offtake facilities we need and then pipe it into the system here.
Okay. I kind of understand you're talking about the sewage reclamation and going through that. I sort of understand that, and I know that there's a lot of safeguards in place. My question is what % of the water sewage that we all generate in this area, how much of that is actually being recycled at this point? And are there any plans to try and increase that by doubling or tripling that amount?
Actually, EPCOR recharges, reuses, or recycles more than 90% of its water across
Really, that high?
all of its systems. And it's,
Well, that's good news to hear.
yeah, very happy about that.
Okay. And the CAGRD fees, when I looked into this, I noticed that that your budget goes out, or forecast budget goes out till I think it's 2028, if I remember right. And those look to be like anywhere from 6 to 10% increases. So is that pretty much what I'm reading properly, and is that the direction that we're probably headed? Or are there some other things in the works to try and mitigate those increases?
Thank you. And yes, I think that sounds about right. I looked at the increases over the last 3 or so years, but it's not, and it comes out to about 3% average. But looking forward, I trust that that's correct. Water prices are going to be going up. All of these supplies that we have to purchase to replenish the water, such as the Harquahela water, and CAP supplies, because of the shortage, are going up. CAP delivers water through the canal and has fixed costs to maintain the canal. And as the amount of water that's available from the Colorado River, as that decreases, then unfortunately those fixed costs, there's less water to spread those fixed costs out. And so the price of CAP water is going to be going up with the shortages that we are seeing coming down the pike. So you can expect the CAGRD rates to increase. Again, I think the 3 to 6% is on track. So, but it is a condition of the drought that we've seen. We're in a 20-year drought, and this is the first year, 2022, that the Bureau of Reclamation has declared a Tier 1 shortage at Lake Mead based on elevations. And so, unfortunately, I wish I could give you better news, but water costs will be going up overall. So that is something to think about.
I have 3 questions. One is with the GRAD fees. So you said that they're going to be going up. Right now, my water bill is more than my electric bill. My water usage was actually only like $23 in water usage. $40 in sewage, about $60. My water bill was almost $180, and you're telling me that that's going to be going up. I paid over $110 just in fees, and you're telling me that I'm now looking at over a $200 a month water bill.
No, the GRD rates that I just spoke of are separate from the adjuster fee that showed the CAGRD.
My GRAD water fee was over $80 alone.
That's a separate fee. That is the mechanism that EPCOR has to collect money from its customers. So that.
But pardon me, to be clear, that fee is set to be reduced by 1/2. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. Right. So I was talking about CAGRD rates that we invoice EPCOR, but they have reduced the adjuster fee that shows up on your property tax, or on your water bill. I'm just saying that the CAGRD fee, or the rates, are going up, but they're not going up the amount that your adjuster fee just went up. They're separate. So I think it's confusing.
So what's the difference between the two?
One is the CAGRD adjuster fee is EPCOR's mechanism to collect monies, and it isn't just 1 year of the invoice in this case. So, and I'll let EPCOR talk about that.
This particular invoice, and it's been mentioned, but I'll just reiterate it, and this particular adjuster reset was too high, frankly. And there was a number of different contributing factors. We did have some increases in CAGRD costs that they passed to us. There were some exemptions, some water exemptions that counted against groundwater usage that expired. And as a result, we had to report more groundwater under Arizona law. And then over the pandemic, the ACC had intentionally kept the adjuster lower because of the pandemic and folks having trouble with jobs and the economy and the like, except that didn't eliminate the costs that were underlying that adjuster reset, and so those carried forward. And so future adjuster resets won't have those components necessarily, although they'll have the underlying cost increases that you had mentioned. But nonetheless, this particular adjuster reset was high, and that's part of the reason why we brought it forward. We proposed having it. We proposed refunds with interest on the amounts. It doesn't address, again, your underlying concerns, and I'd urge you to talk to our customer service representatives who are right here about your water bill generally. That seems to be a large amount of fees, standing here without more information, and they have the information you would need to walk through that and understand it more.
Okay. Question, I need a little clarification as to whether this is true or not, because I am in Santan Valley, I'm in Pinal County, but what I'm being told and what I'm hearing is that we are paying Maricopa County rates even though we are in Pinal County. and they're just like, don't really care that we are in Pinal County and charging us Maricopa County rates anyway.
Yeah, so I think I can try to help clarify that. The Department of Water Resources created what are called active management areas. And there's a Phoenix active management area, a Pinal active management area, and a Tucson active management area. There's a few others, but those are the three in CAP service area in the CAGRD. And our rates are the CAGRD rates are slightly different in each of those AMAs. And your service area, even though it's in Pinal County, falls in the Phoenix active management area.
How is that?
It's the boundaries that were created in the Water Management Act of 1980. So they're hydrological boundaries. They're based on hydrology. So there's some parts of the Phoenix AMA in Pinal County. That's also in the Tucson AMA. There's a portion of Pinal County as well. So they're not the exact same jurisdictional boundaries of the counties, the active management areas. So there's the Santan Phoenix service area and the Santan Pinal service area, and that's because that division is the active management area, the hydrologic boundary.
Do you mind if I follow on to that really quick?
Sure.
In my experience, I go down to the legislature every day, and I find that sometimes experts address us, and it seems like mumbo jumbo to me. So I'm going to try to translate. Basically, they drew the boundaries on geology. So we're all familiar with the Continental Divide. Right? And the Continental Divide, some of the water flows to the Pacific, and some of it flows to the Atlantic, and that's just nature. So the way they drew those boundaries, Phoenix, Pinal, and Tucson, was whether the water flows to the Gila River or the water flows to the Salt River. When it rains here at this high school, it flows into the gutter, and it goes through canals and stuff, and into the Queen Creek, and into the Salt River. So even though this is Pinal County, it's part of that watershed management area. And if you're living somewhere, maybe Coolidge or Florence, it's flowing into the Gila. So it's not so much a county issue, it's just that they drew the lines and the boundaries for groundwater recharge based on where the water naturally goes. Does that help?
Okay. My final question for you guys is, you're saying that you stand behind your water 100% for the quality of your water. I've been having issues losing my hair for quite a while. And then my 16-year-old and my 18-year-old started losing their hair. So we had started looking into water purification to come out and do water softener and water purification for the home. Now, the limit per the government is 500 parts per million for dissolved and undissolved solids in the water. Beyond that, it's not supposed to be used. But yet, my water by 3 different companies was tested at 668. But you're saying that you swear by the quality of your water.
We do, and again, I'd urge you to talk to our customer service representatives. If there's an issue with your water quality, I mean, we're not going to be perfect, but what I can do is what my prior commitment was. We'll be transparent. We will aggressively tackle issues when they arise, and we'll take care of it. We're not going to ignore it. We're not Johnson Utilities. We're not going to blow you off. We want to talk to you. We want to keep talking to you until you say, okay, I'm good. And if you're not good, we'll keep talking to you. So I'd encourage you to talk to the customer service representative, because if there's an issue with your water, we need to address it right away.
Go ahead, back here in the back. Hold on. We're trying to keep this at, where it's got some, anyway, we need to have some rules here, right? We just don't need this to be a free-for-all. So this gentleman in the back.
My name's Steve Lewis, and I've lived down here for 11 years. My wife and I have lived down here for 11 years. Oh, I'm sorry. I understand, if I understood you correctly, you are allowing golf courses and places like that 5 acre feet of water per acre. Is that correct?
No,
I'm sorry,
he's-
did you say how many acre feet per acre?
I thought you said 4 to 5 acre feet of water per acre of land. Is
Ye-
that correct?
Yes, yes, sir. That is what I said. The Arizona Department of Water Resources regulates groundwater in the active management areas.
Excuse me. I understand that.
Okay.
Why so much? I used to have an 80-acre farm in Nebraska that we were allowed 1 acre feet of water for the entire farm, so or 80-acre feet, and we had to use that to grow our crops. The growing season was 5 months. The growing season down here is 2.5 times that amount. Why are we allowing them so much water? Cut it in half. That would conserve one hell of a lot of water.
That's the Department of Water Resources. I do know that they do look at the research on how much each type of plant needs for turf grass, and again, that's, I think, based on research on how much the grass needs.
Okay, I want to ask this question. Are there any farmers in the audience? Okay, how much are you allowed per acre on your farm?
Well, it's been several years since I've been farming, but on an average, it was between 4 and 5 acre feet of water. And so if I wanted to grow alfalfa, I had to reduce the amount of that I had actually in the furrow.
I understand
So-
that because we have a much longer
So it's
growing.
still, the management part on farming is still the same as what you had in Nebraska. It's the same. The difference is we're in a desert here. And in Nebraska,
Well-
you got a lot more water there than
Oh,
we-
no, we don't. Not where I grew
Well,
up.
anyway, I'm just saying, so, yeah, I understand where you're coming from, and yes, we need to look at better farming techniques, and that's something that's being done now.
Sir?
Yes.
A lot of the water that's used on the golf courses is effluent water too, though. So a lot of that is not water that they could use for housing anyway. And also, I went to a farmer's breakfast at Sossaman Farms a couple months ago and spoke to a dairyman there who also grew alfalfa, and he told me that his wells are drilled to 1,000 feet, but they're taking water at 200 now because when they instituted CAP in the 80s, between then and now, if you think about it, all that water that goes to alfalfa also recharges the aquifer to some extent. Obviously, there's some loss to the air and to the plants, but so in a certain sense, they've been recharging the aquifer now since they've been using cap water in the 80s and seen the tables go up. So they're using effluent on the golf course, and some of that's working its way down. So I know it sounds like a lot, but it's not necessarily as deleterious an effect on the whole state as you might think.
Well, then I have a question from Mr. EPCOR there. Do we run separate water lines for effluent water to the golf courses? I don't think so.
There are a handful. Are you asking whether the lines that serve the golf courses are separate?
Yes. Are they separate? Are they supplying only effluent water, wastewater?
Yes.
How come I don't believe you? Because I never see them put in 2 lines separate.
I can't help you there if you don't believe me. But actually, Jacob, right there, he's raising our hand. He's our director
Where?
in charge of the entire area. Jacob, raise your hand. And he could
All right. Thank
wow
you.
you into oblivion with details about our system.
I would like to thank you all for coming out as well. And I appreciate learning that the decrease is going to I'm sorry. And I appreciate learning the decrease. My bill went up 303%. If you look on EPCOR's website, it tells you right there in great big letters how much it's gone up. To the lady that was in front of me, we have to change our water filter system every year, and sometimes we should do it more often. So the quality of the water has not gone up that much since Johnson Utilities has changed, and you've been interim for 3 years and now own the company. And those are just my statements. And my last question is, we're billed like the farmers were billed, by 1,000 gallons. I'm from the East Coast. I've lived here for 13 years, and I still don't understand why we are billed by the 1,000 gallons and not by the gallon or the 100 gallons. Is that something that is ever going to be addressed?
That is part of, when we purchased Johnson Utilities, we inherited all of their tariffs, including the 1,000-gallon increment. And we just finished the proceeding involving that, but in the next rate case, it is something that could come up at the ACC and change. It's a tariff, and we don't have the discretion to change it unilaterally. We can only do what the ACC permits us to do with our tariffs. So that's absolutely something that we can consider.
Thank you.
I just want to say thanks for coming out and decreasing our water bill. Mine went from $90 to $198. So if you say it's going down, I appreciate that because my water hasn't increased the amount I've used. But this is more for Goodman and the ACC. So is there any way, I know we can't stop the amount of people coming here, but we don't need a car wash on every corner. So is there a way to stop that? Because I'm sure that hurts the system that we're drawing our water from.
Good afternoon, neighbors. My name is Rick Harvey. I'm a homeowner. Go ahead.
I think you wanted.
I'm sorry, yes, can we?
I think you wanted.
Yeah. Thank you.
It sounded like that was a question for the supervisors. At the commission, we don't have any jurisdiction over who's building what and where. What we have jurisdiction over is just the utilities being able to offer those connections. And so certainly when Johnson Utilities did not have the ability to meet the demand for service, then we did put in place a moratorium. And that was a very extreme measure that the commission really, in my view, can only do when the utility does not have that ability to provide those services. But with regard to the authorization to construct and zoning, that's certainly a local government decision to be made. Yeah.
Let me add something to that too, because I think the Department of Water Resources monitors this water demand and the availability constantly, because there's been many times over the years I've been here. I moved all the way from Tempe to Casa Grande 50 years ago, but I can tell you that we've seen building permits shut down in the Casa Grande area back in the day because the Department of Water Resources wanted to know how much water was there. I mean, so there's a lot going on a day-to-day basis with the departments and with entities. Everybody's very concerned about it, so they're all monitoring real close. And then back to the farmers, and as Neal said, there's been the farming activity has actually benefited the aquifer in the Pinal AMA over the years because it has helped stabilize it and actually brought it up in certain areas. So, it's being monitored constantly.
And then to your question, as far as some of the developments that's going on, for instance, the car washes that are on every corner, that has just been the question posed to me particularly. There are certain requirements within the zoning of each of those properties. And so when those properties are zoned and they allow for certain things, car washes is one of them. And so when the landowner has somebody that's in the car wash business that says, I want to put a car wash here, and they've got an opportunity to capitalize on that, then they're going to do that because the zoning allows them to do that. That's the part that that's where that all comes from. So there's a certain parameter that all of these locations have. And with property rights that we as property owners have, and then these zonings that they provide for what they can put on it, every one of those car washes have those kind of, they're able to do that if they choose to do so.
Mike, there's 3 car washes on the corner of Hunt and Bella Vista, and there's only 4 corners. I'm with this guy because I stopped washing my truck when more paint came off than dirt.
For fear of repeating myself, good afternoon, neighbors. My name's Rick Harvey. I'm a homeowner in Copper Basin. I appreciate all of y'all coming here today, taking time out of your schedule. You neighbors as well. I know this is an important topic for all of us. I've heard Miss Laura with CAGRD, I hope I got the initials right, say the fee is somewhere between 3 and 10% increase per year. I've heard EPCOR say that our usage has increased in this area year after year. I would hope that that usage increase is in line or linear with the number of new homes or new dwellings or new businesses, car washes that are being built in this area. My point is that it would seem to me that the individual dwelling owner would be responsible for that 3 or 10% increase annually. And I understand that there's a reset or an adjustment factor that EPCOR is doing for the replenishment of the aquifers. But to me, it would be an act of good faith by EPCOR to say, hey, you know what, we're just going to pass that fee along without putting a markup on it. Any response to that?
You're talking specifically about the GRD fee?
Yes, sir.
There is no markup on it whatsoever. It's passed through 1-for-1.
But you're talking about a reset or an adjustment, but I also heard you say that the prospectus on that was adjusted just recently, where we were adjusting based on projected use, and now we're adjusting based on current use. So if the current use is what you're using for the adjustment and the increase is 3 to 10% annually, then it would seem to me each dwelling owner would be responsible for 3 to 10% unless there's a markup on it.
And I hadn't gotten into the specifics of the GRD adjuster, but I'm happy to sort of touch on the topic. Right now, the GRD adjuster was reset to collect under collections from 2020, the 2020 invoice and the 2021 invoice, and under the Johnson methodology for the 2022 invoice. And what we did is proposed, let's change it to only amounts that have actually been paid to CAGRD and not for amounts that we think we can estimate going into the future. So that was the sort of impetus behind our application to refund folks money. But it is a 1-for-1 pass-through. There's no markup.
Hi, my name's Josh. Thanks for being here. I have one quick question, and it's in regards to the fee. You said it's based on the geology lines that were drawn, I think you said back in 1988. It's based on the flow from where water would go from up here to the Salt River. My question is, wouldn't the town of Queen Creek also go to the Salt River?
The town of Queen Creek is in the Phoenix active management area, yes. Yes, sir.
The only reason why I bring that up is I've been out in Santan Valley since 2014, and the entire time I had Queen Creek water. Never had that fee applied until I moved about 10 miles south.
So the fee can be collected through taxes instead of through the water utility. And the town of Queen Creek is collecting it through property tax. And that accounts for why you see it now on your bill. Previously, you did not.
So the city of Santan essentially isn't providing anything for that.
So there is no city of Santan Valley. It's an unincorporated Pinal, and the water's served by EPCOR, which is a private utility, right? In town of Queen Creek, they have the town of Queen Creek Water, which provides the water. So they are collecting the CAGRD through their property tax, and here it's collected through the water utility. I would venture to guess that your property tax is substantially lower on this side than on theirs too, though. To be fair.
And we call it Queen Creek over here.
Yes, but my question though, why do we have the city of Santan for
we're not a city. And so that's the big issue that you're.
We need you to gather the signatures for us.
Yeah.
Talk to Jean Stockton back there. She'll help you out.
There you.
We tried that already. We were denied.
3 times.
There's a huge debate over that.
Yeah, let's not go into that.
Yeah, please. That's a whole nother meeting. I just have a question. We're the Phoenix AMA. Obviously, we've talked a little about that, how it's divided by hydrology and different things like that. According to ASU, the Kyle Center for Water Policy at the Morrison Institute, we have 34 of our wells here have a plus of 2 feet over a 10-year period from 1999 to 2019. 14 of those wells was like a negative, but it kind of was like not even a foot. It was like half a foot. With hydrology changing, it's an aquifer. How we recognize an aquifer, it's not just like an empty area underneath the ground. There's substrate and all these different things. There's a whole geography and all that has to do with it as well. You say that we're being taxed by our usage, but yet the well depth doesn't seem to indicate that they're being strained. If anything, it seems to indicate that by the dry wells, by farming, stuff that you've already pointed out, we're replenishing that just out of natural process. So I'm just wondering, is there a better way that we can determine our water usage, the level of the aquifer, all these different things, than actually just getting taxed off of our usage? Because that may not actually be a relevant number if we're actually replenishing it just as much. So I'm just wondering kind of what's the basis for that and for our usage if actually the water level is going up, not going down.
There you go.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. So that's a great question. The AMAs were established because there was a lot of groundwater pumping at the time, and there still is, but there was deficits of groundwater. A lot of it was farming, and so the replenishment, the idea of the CAGRD replenishing the groundwater pumped is actually on an AMA-wide basis. So it's that watershed that Representative Carter talked about, making sure that as a whole, that watershed, you weren't pumping out more groundwater than you were replenishing. So there are some areas, and I would say you're very fortunate to have those water levels rising, because there's some areas that water level is going down, and some areas where they have halted some development because those water levels aren't sustainable. So I would think that it would, the concept that you proposed is an interesting one, but at least the rules, the groundwater management are based on a whole region and not just particular areas. And so overall, the goal is to make sure from an AMA-wide perspective that you're not pumping more groundwater out of the ground than you're putting back in the ground. It's kind of like a check account. You take money out of your checking account, you put it back in. So making sure it balances out.
Let me add something else to that. On the Phoenix AMA is a safe yield AMA. So it has to replenish whatever it takes out. I mean, in totality of the entire Phoenix AMA. The Pinal AMA is a managed depletion AMA. In other words, it's kind of known that it will deplete. It's how they manage it and still, but are able to use it. So there's a separate set of rules for AMAs. Different AMAs have different sets of rules. Pinal County is unique in the fact that it does have the 3 AMAs, the Phoenix, the Pinal, and the Tucson AMA, and then a third of the county has no AMA. And so there's a lot of rules, and it just kind of depends, where you're developing and where you're building and what those rules are going to be. And we actually have part of the Pinal AMA goes into Maricopa County as well. So it's difficult to really just kind of just draw a line and say this is it. So there's a lot going on with the AMAs, but there are different sets of rules for each AMA. Even the depth of the wells are determined by which AMA you're in. So a lot of detail there.
Hi, my name is Monica. I live on the east side of Santan Valley. And thank you for being here. You've actually answered almost all my questions. But I do have two more that are kind of important to me. And whoever you were from the HOA, thank you for being here. We need more HOAs at these meetings for sure. So with that being said, one of the questions that I have, because I know some of you actually are working with HOAs, the hard part about living in HOA is they have requirements. You have to have 8 shrubs or trees or plants and trees and all of those things. And when it gets really hot, I'm just like someone else here. There's only 2 of us in my home. I've lived here for 4 years and my water bill has doubled. When we bought our home, we literally replaced everything. Hot water heaters, dishwashers, shower heads. I mean, we did everything we could to be water sensible. And our water, as someone else said here, continuously fluctuates every month. Everything's on timers. And it's me and my husband. And respectfully calling your customer service is a nightmare. They will tell us to get a plumber to come out and make sure we don't have leaks. I don't have leaks. Everything's new, including my entire irrigation system. And so I'm sharing this because it's truly a concern. And I would hope that you guys would take this back to your supervisors and say, look, customer service, truly, all need to give the same answers every time people call, because it's always different. And we're always told to call somebody else or get a plumber, or God forbid, I was even told to learn how to budget so I could pay my bills. So there was that. With that being said, if you guys could work with the HOAs, if we really are in a drought and water is getting harder and our bills are going to go up because you guys want us to use less water, I think there needs to be some accountability for the HOAs too. Because if we don't water our plants and they die, we get fined. Right? So it's just this perpetual nightmare for all of us. Not that I want my whole front yard and my backyard to be all rocks, but we need some help here in that area. Secondly, and then I'm done, there are a lot of folks that live out here that are much more mature. You've got disabled people, you've got folks on disability. When these bills double and triple like this, out of nowhere, is there any kind of assistance for our vets, for the disabled, for the people who are on a fixed income? Because some of them are disabled and they can't come out of retirement. We're just stuck. And I'm a caretaker of a disabled, so I'm speaking for all of the people that I have seen and heard saying the same thing. What do we do? So thank you for your time, truly.
Thank you very much for your comments. I really appreciate them. And I'll let Representative Carter talk about the HOAs in a moment, but regarding our programs, we have a disabled veteran program, we have a deployed service member program, we have a low-income program, and the customer service team that's standing right there, they're standing there. They can provide you information on all of them. We really don't have a very high barrier to applying for them. We want people on them. I'd counter, it's true, and so we'd really encourage you to talk to them, see what you qualify for, and take advantage of as many as you can.
In terms of the HOAs, I will tell you that is something that I 100% agree with you. I'm totally on board with, and I'm happy to report that the legislature is trying to help in that regard. So this session, we passed a bill that says that the HOAs cannot forbid artificial grass. So that's not the law right now. It will go into effect 90 days after session, but that's coming. So in the sense that if the HOA is trying to tell you, oh, you have to have a lawn or something, that's going to be illegal later this year. There's a lot more that we could do, but I'll tell you, and Walt will back me up here, I think, that it's a bit of a third rail. I mean, you get too close and you light on fire when you start messing with HOAs. People get really angry. And I drafted a bill that said an HOA shall not be able to forbid different species of plant. Mind you, not even going farther than that. Like, you have to have a tree, okay, but I did that. I drafted the bill, I put it forward, it went to the committee, and it didn't even get a hearing because we got so blown up from HOAs on that. So I would ask for your help with that. Next year, I'm going to be doing a series of stakeholder meetings, and if you see me after the meeting, I'll get your email. Stacy Davies from the Santan Heights HOA is going to work with me on that, and we're going to try to make some meaningful HOA reforms. So I'm your man for that, and I'm all in.
Okay, thanks very much for coming, guys. I do appreciate it, and I really want to thank the people that helped coordinate this, along with Mr. Goodman. My question, I guess, probably primarily for Thomas. If I heard you correctly, you were talking about a way to recover some of or reduce the CAGRD by offsetting it with the effluent, and that hadn't been done in the past, and apparently you just have discovered that, if I understood you correctly, or within the last month or so, and that now you're looking at getting that approved where you can use that as an offset. And if my understanding was correct, there was a lot of stuff going on, if that understanding is correct and that is approved, then can we anticipate a reduction in our CAGRD charges after that's approved? Assuming, again, I heard everything correctly, and that's what I heard.
Yeah, when we took over as interim manager and as part of our assessment, one of the things that we came to learn is that the recharge facilities, there was no permits attached to the recharge facilities. So even if Johnson had done something with the effluent, he wouldn't get formal credit for it for water credit purpose. But in order to get that credit, we need to formally apply and obtain a permit after demonstrating that the actual recharge facility itself is in line with the existing rules and regulations. And so we did that, meaning we made the recharge facilities sort of kosher, so to speak, and we're in the process of pursuing 3 different permits, and I don't really see any obstacles to getting those granted. So once they are, we will be able to recharge that effluent into the ground. That will create storage credits that can then be used to offset our groundwater usage and reduce the GRD fee, yes.
So then, and when do you expect that to take place?
I'm sorry, I don't have a precise time frame. Over the next year or 2, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's not something we necessarily control because it's with the Department of Water Resources, but they have a time frame. But in the end, they don't. They do their work and then they issue the permit. I haven't seen any sort of untoward slowing by them. So. Yeah, we've done everything we can do.
Thank you. One more, and then we're gonna. If you have any other questions afterwards, after Denise asks her questions, just get with any of us on the panel or over here with the customer service, and we'll try to answer your questions, okay?
I want to apologize in advance because this question might sound really stupid, but I'm confused. I heard 2 different things. I think I heard 2 different things. In the beginning of the panel presentation, there was a couple phrases thrown around about the 100-year supply, and that the builders had to show certificate for that. Yay. And then toward the end of the panel discussion, it was, well, because we're in a drought and there's a shortage, your water rates are going to go up. So do we have a 100-year supply or we have a shortage?
Thank you for your question. I'll try to answer that. So depending on where you live, you may get surface water, you may get groundwater, or you may get a combination. The 100-year supply is based on, it relates to any type of supply. The Colorado River, which supplies about 40% of the state's water, 36% of the state's water, that's in a shortage. So EPCOR's primary water source is groundwater. And so EPCOR has to show the Department of Water Resources that it has a 100-year supply of groundwater. The groundwater isn't impacted by the shortage on the Colorado River. Where I may have confused you is that the GRD is tasked with going out and acquiring water supplies to replenish that groundwater pumping. So we have to purchase supplies like surface water. So our costs are going up so that we can replenish the groundwater. So, no, you have a 100-year supply. You have a 100-year supply of groundwater based on groundwater and maybe a few of the other supplies that EPCOR mentioned, like the NIA water supply, which is a CAP supply. But primarily EPCOR in this service area in the Santan Valley has a 100-year supply based on groundwater. So the shortage that I talked about on the Colorado River does not impact your groundwater directly. Well, again, though, the GRD has a replenishment obligation to replenish the groundwater, and we use surface water. The supplies that the CAGRD uses to replenish your groundwater are surface water supplies. So you're paying for your groundwater from EPCOR, and you're also paying for the replenishment services that we provide to EPCOR. So if anyone else want to help me out with that one?
Yeah, I was just going to say exactly what she just described. So you have that 100-year water supply, but maintaining it is more costly now because of the shortages in the surface water, and that the price of water has gone up, and so replenishing it is more costly.
And there's something else that may help clarify that. The Assured Water Supply Program, there are a number of criteria that EPCOR as a designated water provider has to meet. The first one is 100-year of physical water supply. And EPCOR meets that by proving that there's 100 years, at least 100 years of groundwater that they can serve to you. Another criteria of the Assured Supply Program is that water use, and if it's groundwater, has to be made consistent with the management goal. And that was what Supervisor Miller was talking about. And in the Phoenix AMA, the management goal is safe yield. And so that's where we come in. We have to replenish that groundwater to meet the management goal. So your supply, your groundwater 100 years is safe. It's not impacted by whether or not the GRD can get surface water supplies. But in order to make it consistent with the management goal, there's that added step that we have to come in and help replenish. Or they have, EPCOR can also replenish its effluent, which they're working on doing. They can purchase credits, but that can also be an expense, right? They have to balance the costs. And those are all ways that they can offset what we need to replenish. But I think there's two things going on in that assured supply is you have a guaranteed supply of groundwater, but then the law also says you have to make it consistent with the management goals. And that's what the GRD does, is replenish the groundwater pumped and makes it consistent. So that's why our costs are going up, because we rely on CAP water, and those costs are going up. So hope I answered it. I know there's a lot of moving parts. You do have a 100-year supply of groundwater.
So the AMA is the active management area. I think somebody asked that question, and it's a term we use, and there's 5 active management areas in the state of Arizona. 3 of them right here all touch Pinal County, and then there's Yavapai and what's the other one? Prescott. So there's 2 others. So there's 5 total. But anyway, that's a term that you'll hear bouncing around, and they all have different rules and different management goals. So I wanted to throw out one thing here that hasn't had a lot of talk, and I think maybe the homeowners associations could think about this. The city of Casa Grande is working on with a program called Save It. They've set a goal, and they're working with Arizona Water on it, to reduce the water usage in the city of Casa Grande by 15%. And it's, I don't have the number memorized, but it's a significant amount of water. And the city's actually going in and taking grass out of parks, and they're re-landscaping. And there's there's some programs like that you can work with that really do help manage the water and the aquifer going forward. And along with, I'm working with the U of A. They have a program on plant, types of plants that use very little water, and it's basically to create what is called the master gardener, which will give you the most bang for your buck for your plants, and how little you really have to water a lot of plants and different types of plants. There's some programs out there that need to be explored, I think, by cities and towns and HOAs, and everybody has to kind of pitch in and be a part of this going forward.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to stand if you guys don't mind. Please pardon my dusty shoes. I was putting up campaign signs all day Sunday, and the town of Queen Creek called today and said I had to uproot one because it was illegally placed. So, yes, Haley, is there one? Yeah? Oh, one more question, and then we'll wrap up. No, don't be sorry. That's what we're here for.
Okay, what bothers me the most, and from what I've heard out of this whole scenario, is that we are getting charged for 1,000 gallons of water. We might not use that 1,000 gallons of water with 2 people in the house, desert landscaping, but we're still getting charged for that. Why?
The average household water use that I've looked up per person is about 80 or 88 gallons a day. So in a month, you're probably using 1,000. I think that's a good point to bring up to EPCOR, though. Johnson Utilities used to do $1,000-gallon increments. So you're not bound by that, right? You could bring a new rate case and change that. Is that correct? Is that something we can do?
It is something that can be changed, and after hearing these comments tonight, it's something that we should absolutely be changing.
Okay. So just to be clear, ladies and gentlemen, my name's Neal Carter. I purchased my house in Santan Heights in 2010. And I live in my house in Santan Heights in 2010 with my wife, who's here. And yes, I drink the water, although my wife thinks I'm crazy. And so basically I'm one of you. And in America, this is how it's supposed to work, right? It's supposed to be a citizen democracy. And what that means is that a ratepayer, just like yourselves, represents you. And so the first thing I want to say is thank you. I want to say thank you for coming here. I couldn't do this alone. None of us could do this alone. And it's only when you show up and keep your government officials accountable that we can get any change done. So first of all, I want to say thank you really sincerely for being here. So thank you. So I did notice that we have Chad Guzman in the office. He works for, or not in the office, or rather in the audience, and he works for EPCOR, and he will vouch for me that I call EPCOR all the time. I called EPCOR to make sure that the Johnson utility settlement payments would go to people who are no longer their customers. I called them a little while ago involving, I have another rental in Santan Heights, and it was backing up in the sewage. And my wife's nodding because I wanted to make sure it was my problem and not a street problem. And on their customer service line, I didn't get through. So I called them to be like, what's going on with that? And then he's nodding because I do call them, and I do that because I'm your mouthpiece, and that's my job. And so I got the bill too. I got the bill with the double CAGRD fee, and of course I heard from all of you. And so what I had done is contacted House research staff. We have Jordi Fuentes who's here with the House research staff. I want to thank him for his involvement. And we got together with CAGRD, with CAP, with EPCOR, the ACC representatives, and what we found was a number of things. But one thing that we found is this billing issue with CAGRD, whereby Johnson had done it prospectively. And so, to be clear, when you leave this meeting, be assured that you will see a reduction in your CAGRD fee. It was just decided by the ACC this morning, so thank you, Commissioner Olson, for that. And we are looking at probably about a 1/2 reduction in the CAGRD fee. So that's a done deal, just to be clear, if anybody came in after our presentations late or something. So you will be seeing a reduced bill next time. There was somebody who said she had paid $80 in fees. That would be like something like $40 in fees. You're going to see significantly less in fees. That's one thing. And the second thing is that you'll be seeing a credit for last month insofar as they overcollected that fee. So that's good news, and I'm glad to report that. So thank you to Commissioner Olson, thank you to ACC, and thank you to EPCOR for that. However, I'm known for being the honest guy down there in Phoenix, and the reality is that for me, there's still questions that are unanswered. I wonder why that wasn't caught before by the ACC, for example. And we've seen, so although I'm thankful to the ACC, and I know we have Nick Myers here who's running for the position too, I would ask Nick and the Commissioner, I would ask, are we going to catch these billing issues beforehand in the future? And because if we're not, we're going to see a lot more angry citizens like this in town halls coming over here to ask about them. So that's one thing I wanted to highlight. And then also, since we're here, I agree with this lady here that we shouldn't be paying for payments that were made by the prior provider. So insofar as Johnson made those payments and now EPCOR stepped in and only a couple of years ago, it seems to me that should be a clean break. So I would implore EPCOR to work with us on rectifying that issue too. So again, I really thank all of you for coming. If you have any questions or concerns, please see me after. Last thing I would like to say is to address some of the water usage concerns since we've had so many questions about that. To be clear, our state is using less water now, believe it or not, and you can look this up, it's using less water now than it was in the 80s. We're using a lot less groundwater, okay? Farming accounts for about 70% of our water usage, so agriculture usages, okay? And believe it or not, little known fact, because there's so much misinformation out there, the housing uses less than the farms. And that's because they're flooding fields for things like alfalfa. They measure this in terms of acre feet. If you use 1 acre feet a year, acre foot a year, that's about 330,000 gallons, something like this, I believe, right? It's right in there of water a year. You can do the math yourself. If you're using 80 a day, you can fit 4 houses on an acre of former farmland, and you're not using as much water as the farmland was using. So long as the farms are being converted to houses and not just open desert, we're actually conserving water in that sense. That's one thing. And like we said, a lot of the water usage is, in fact, recharging the groundwater through the usage of it itself. So there's a lot of misinformation that's out there in terms of water usage. I would encourage you to learn more about that. But we're not going to run out of residential water usage here. What we're going to have to do is rethink our allocations, look for new sources and other things as well. So again, like I say, look forward to a reduction in your bill. We're fighting for you up here, me, Mike, Commissioner Olson, as well as Supervisor Miller and everybody, and we'll be here afterwards for questions. And the number one thing is that we thank you for coming here and helping us to rectify things going forward. Thank you, everyone.